Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and I hope you're here for a spicy conversation today because today we're getting into it. We're getting into it on a topic that I've covered on a few crowdfunding videos already. I've talked about it in the past. It's been the subject of an entire video I did on marketing, on various ways that crowdfunding marketing gets you. I've also called it out in multiple to-back or not-to-backs when going over various projects in the crowdfunding space. But today we are talking about why I freaking hate VIP limited pledges. So, as usual, we'll timestamp everything, but let's start off by talking about what are VIP limited pledges, in case you haven't seen those videos, and you're just here for the spicy hot takes and the hill that I'm going to die on. Hopefully not die on, but if you're here for all of that, let's talk about what VIP limited pledges are. You may have seen them. They're not that common yet, which is a good thing. I'm going to do everything in my power to make them not a common thing because I hate them and I think they're a terrible, scummy thing for the board game crowdfunding space. But what are these things? The VIP limited pledge is the idea that you sit there, as a creator, you sit there and you say, hey, you see this game here? Let's grab a game. Nanty-narking. Why Nanty-narking? Because it's just next to me on the shelf. I'm not going to put this in the thumbnail because that would be mean to Phalanx Games. But Nanty-narking, this game is on crowdfunding right now, and it's $75. I don't know what I'm doing with the hand here, it's just working for me. $75 for Nanty-narking over here, that's what it costs. But if you look right next to it, there's another pledge. There's another pledge, it's the VIP limited pledge, and it's not always the same name. Why would it be? But it's some version, some name of something that says, by the way, you know how it's $75? It's actually $60 or $50. Let's call it 50. It's $50. But there's only 100 of those pledges, and there's 7 left. And so you know, innocent, naive, looking for a good deal, all those good things, and I was innocent and naive once upon a time. I once believed these things. I went there, or you go there, and you click buy on that $50 pledge. Boom, there's now only 6 left. You've locked in the deal. You're saving $25. Good on you for being in the right place at the right time. Then you show up at the project 2 days later, and suddenly there's 9 pledges left of 150 of these limited pledges. And a week and a half later, there's 4 pledges left of 200 limited pledges. The numbers keep growing. The limited pledges aren't limited. What the limited pledges are a sense of FOMO, a sense of fear of missing out, the idea that you will not get this game at a good price. You are going to unnecessarily pay more for this game unless you hit back now. Unless you lock in one of those limited slots that are available. One of those limited slots that are a lie. That are a blatant and bold-faced lie that if you ask in the comments, they're like, oh, you know, maybe, like, yeah, we're trying to, like, we've seen economies of scale, people are backing, and so we're monitoring them, and at some point we'll cut them off. You get some sort of garbage answer while they lie to your face to try to convince you that the other price is the real price, and you are just one of the lucky few who is able to get your hands on this. If I seem pissed off throughout this video, it's because I am. I hate it. I hate it so much. And we're going to get into it. I'm going to have a Q&A at the end of this. A Q&A where I came up with the questions and I did the answers because this isn't a live stream. We're going to get into this, and I guarantee you it's not going to be the last time I talk about it. Well, one of the Q&As actually might make it the last time I talk about it, but unlikely. Unlikely. We'll get into all of that. I don't like these pledges. They are a constant and ongoing lie to your audience. But there are other things in the board game space. There are other things that bother other people, and they don't bother me as much. They don't. In fact, I've put out videos defending companies on many, many things, and here I am taking a last stand on this particular issue. Again, I hope it's not my last stand. I hope it's one of many stands, because, well, I like the space that I'm in, and I want to stay around. But there are many other lies in the board game space. There are many other lies in marketing, and there are other things that are FOMO. So why this? Why is this the thing that bothers me so much? Let's talk about some other lies. Let's do some comparisons. Let's have some compare and contrast. Let's talk about other things and go into why I see them differently. And before I do, let's get into this very clearly. This is all my own opinion. This is all me, my opinion, the thing that's bothering me. At the end of the day, there are many things that might bother you. There are many things that might make you feel betrayed, manipulated, lied to, all of those things, and those feelings are completely valid for you. They might not be things that others feel. They might not be things that I feel. Similarly, on my end as well, this is the thing that I am bothered by. There are other things that don't bother me nearly as much, or alternatively, I'm resigned to the fact that they are already here. Again, we'll get to some of the stuff in the Q&A, but let's just start off with why I think they're different to begin with. Let's start with an easy and obvious one. Not necessarily easy, an obvious one, that you have fake funding goals. There is a known lie out there about the nature of fake funding goals. When a creator tells you, hey, by the way, it's going to take $20,000 for us to go ahead and make this game. And then the project, hits $27,000, and before you know it, they've canceled the project. They're like, oh my gosh, we thought we'd get $100K, and sorry, we have to cancel the project now. And you're like, well, then why'd you say $20,000? And they're like, oh, that's just the algorithm. It helps lead to success, and so those are all good things. And so, sorry about that. We really apologize, and it's not great. And I've defended the fact, I've acknowledged the fact that any form of a lie that you're using to get a sale is not a good thing. I don't like the fact that the ecosystem incentivizes a lie, but I also recognize, even while I am not condoning it, because how can you condone a lie, I'm also saying, well, I guess there are situations where you could condone a lie, but the greater good has to be much more significant. This is not a situation in which I'm condoning the lie. This is a situation in which I'm recognizing the conflict that exists. I'm recognizing the hard place that creators find themselves in, and I'm recognizing that the ecosystem does very often punish creators for giving a genuine, honest funding goal if that funding goal is anything over $50,000. But they're both a lie. And you can make the same argument to this one. Well, I mean, the creators are just trying to survive. Creators are just trying to make sure their project is successful. And if these limited pledges are a lie that results in them actually being able to fund, being able to succeed, why is that not the same as a pure, innocent white lie? And I have several answers to this, several answers. The first is the fact that I do think the emotion triggered by the lies is different. The fake funding goal is a lie that is there to inspire a sense of confidence. And again, you might say, but throughout this entire video, you might say, well, you're justifying this and excusing that. Maybe. I have reasons, but maybe. I'm totally fine with the fact that I'm justifying one, not the other. And again, the Q&A will deal with some of the other stuff as well. It's not really a Q&A, it's just more of me talking to the camera, but it feels different. But the first is that one lie inspires confidence and the other lie inspires fear. The lie that you sit there and say, hey, by the way, this is a funding goal of $20,000, when it's really a funding goal of $50,000, the goal of that is to take away the fear, to take away the sense of failure that is present in a campaign. You are lying to inspire confidence because the ecosystem has people pulling away when they really shouldn't be. There's no real risk when a campaign is not funded yet. There's no real risk. But for whatever reason, for whatever perception, people look at a project that isn't funded yet, and they're like, ooh, I don't need to touch this. It's not funding anyway. You're like, okay, then back it. You're not losing your money. You only get charged of the campaign funds, so why are you afraid of this? But there is a sense of positivity that is present when you are part of something successful, when you are part of something that's working. And so the first distinction is that one lie is there to incentivize a positive feeling within the campaign, and the other lie is fear. Fear that you won't get the good deal. Fear that there's only 7 spots left on the good deal. You know how you slightly change the lie to not be about fear, but to be about positivity? When you make it so that there's 2 pledge levels, one is $50 and one is $75 is the normal price. There's an idea whenever you go out and buy things of the normal price. You go to Amazon, it's like $49.99, but like it's $34 today. That same lie is a common lie, but without the sense of without the sense of it being limited. It's a lie that gives you that sense of you're getting a good deal. You're getting it at a better price. You're finding it at a good opportunity, a good time, whatever it is. But when you introduce the time element, when you introduce the sense that you will not get it, you are throwing fear into the mix. You are throwing a sense of loss and fear and negative feelings into that lie that you are creating. It is not an innocent lie that is designed to just make things all roses and happiness. And I'm not saying those lies are good. I'm not. I'm distinguishing between levels of bad, or at least the way I see those levels of bad. And so the first thing is the way those lies are, is one is a sense of positivity being imbued. And that's true when you have that sale price, when you have that, hey, it's, $49 down from $89 today. One is a sense of positivity of you getting something good, of you being involved in something good. And the other is a sense of fear that you will not get this thing if you don't act now. It applies pressure, mental pressure on the consumer to make a urgent decision. Marketing exists. Marketing is present. I recognize the reality that is marketing. I recognize that marketing is full of things that alternate between being totally and totally fine to possibly a little bit pushing on our emotions to just being present in different ways. I recognize that marketing exists. I'm not saying I love any of it, but I think there are levels of bad. And I think this is one level of bad. Another distinction, and to me a bigger distinction, is the nature of the evolving and changing lie. When you sit there and you say your funding goal is $20,000 and it's really $50,000, it is a singular lie at a singular point of time, and it's also a lie that for most people in most ways will never ever be discovered. It's different when you have these limited pledges. A singular lie at a singular place that might never be discovered is more innocent in nature. It is not okay. I am not saying that lying is okay. I am distinguishing between levels of why something bothers me more than something else. Most people may never realize that the campaign that they backed had a fake funding goal. And you're not constantly changing the goalposts. For most people, you'll never really understand it. When you have these VIP limited pledges and the number keeps changing, you are constantly changing the milestones. You're moving the goalposts. You're constantly willing to reiterate, to lie to your backers, to your community, to your audience again and again and again and again. It is not a singular point in time. It is an often repeated and constant lie. It is Charlie Brown and the freaking footballers. You keep pulling it away every single time. Just one more time. Just one more time. You are manipulating your audience with a consistent, ongoing, changing lie that is likely to be caught because of the nature of its ongoing, changing, limiting lie. This is the clickbait of crowdfunding. That's what this is. This is the opportunity to emotionally manipulate your audience, knowing full well that as soon as they click on that video, they'll see that they were emotionally manipulated, but you've done your job. You've closed that sale. They have it in their cart. They are mentally committed to the game now, and so they're kind of like, well, now I want it because now I backed it. And so even though they realize they've been lied to, you have traded that sense of trust, that sense of any form of community, any sense of goodwill for the fact that you closed the sale. The fact that you are willing to consistently and constantly move the goalposts, knowing full well that people might see that and feel manipulated along the way. This is not just marketing. This is a level of manipulation for the sake of closing the sale. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to when you lie to your audience. With the knowledge that the lie might be discovered, you are trading that sense of manipulation for one more dollar. That's what you're doing. It is the clickbait of crowdfunding, and I want nothing to do with it. I don't want it in this space. I want it gone. I want it gone. I don't like what it's doing. You ever been on those, how is this different than regular marketing? How is it different than any form of marketing? Have you ever been on those websites that, you ever clicked on some random product and you go to a site and it's $14. I'm just gonna make up numbers. I have no idea. It's $14, but there's a giant little countdown clock there. There's a countdown clock on the site that says, 7 minutes and 45 seconds, 7 minutes and 44 seconds. This deal is only good for 7 minutes and 41 seconds. This deal is only good for 6 minutes and 43 seconds. And you're deciding whether you actually want that watch or not, because now it's down to 5 minutes and 14 seconds, except when you refresh the page, when you go back tomorrow, that timer is reset, the price is the same. You are being directly lied to with a sense of urgency. Have you ever gone to the sites, have those sites felt scummy and shady and manipulative to you? Because they do to me. And that's what this feels like. That's the extra level. It is not just a price differential. It's not just, hey, that tie is $99 and it's marked down to $29.99. You're getting a great deal. Again, I'm not saying those laws are good. I don't like that. In fact, in the EU, I believe, they actually have laws that are coming out around the nature of like what the actual price is or not. I believe you're no longer, don't quote me on this, but I believe there are laws around the idea that you can no longer say the real price is X unless it has been sold at that price at least once in the past 30 days. And there are still ways to manipulate that. I think you can like just post it at that price one day and then drop back down. But at least you have to have the real price has to be a present factor that exists for you to say that this is the sale price. You can no longer just say that something is $39.99 marked down from $69.99. You can't say that anymore unless at some point it was $69.99. You can't do that. And I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to adjust and to constantly take into account marketing and the space we're in, and to try to incentivize and encourage the least degree of manipulation and any form of emotional manipulation that could go on in marketing. I am all for it getting better and better. But when you slap that timer on the site, when you slap a limited pledge levels on those pledges, I think it changes the conversation to not just the sense of a good deal, not just the innocent lie that makes you feel better. And I'm not saying innocent, the lie that makes you feel better, but it's the lie that gives you FOMO. And if you're like, okay, great, so you've talked about the lying, but you haven't talked about the FOMO. Where are you with all these come on Kickstarters and their giant stretch goals full of who knows what and all of those things? And the answer I have there is pretty simple. There's lots of FOMO in the crowdfunding space. There's lots of FOMO. I understand why there's FOMO in the crowdfunding space. I genuinely do. But the first and biggest distinction is FOMO without lying is better than FOMO with lying. You know what's not the best? If Come On says, hey, by the way, here's all these extras miniatures you're going to get if you back this pledge, and by the way, joke's on you, you're not actually getting them, we lied to you. That's not okay. FOMO with lying is so much worse than FOMO on its own. FOMO, I understand and recognize the reality of why it exists. At the end of the day, if you want to give backers an incentive to back the campaign now, as opposed to waiting for retail later, because they are, we've talked about this in recent videos, there's risk in crowdfunding. Things can fail, things can take longer, you are backing things without reviews, so you are effectively asking someone to go ahead and buy something at a worse time for them to buy it. Why should they ever support a crowdfunding campaign? And the answer is if you give them a reason. And sometimes, not always, sometimes that reason does involve FOMO. The things you will get if you help us now. It's offering, because it is frustrating. It does incentivize you to back, but that's the point. The point is it tries to counter the reasons not to back, because otherwise there's just reasons not to back. And so the incentive, the idea that you have to provide an incentive, I understand that. You know what I'm less on board with? When your incentive isn't an incentive, it's a lie. If the incentive is not that, hey, by the way, you're getting a good deal, the incentive is, we're going to lie to you and tell you you're getting a better deal, that's FOMO that's being lied about. There weren't 7 pledges left. There wasn't a reason for you to click that now. You could have just left the price as is, except we gave you that false sense of urgency. You know why? Because we thought we'd get an extra sale of it. And that was worth the betrayal, that was worth the destruction of the community, that was worth the destruction of any sense of actual companionship in a crowdfunding campaign. These things, the whole premise of crowdfunding to some extent is about the conversation, it's about the community, it's about let's build these things together. And I recognize, by the way, if you are a creator watching this video, I recognize that you're currently talking to GelUp or whatever marketing agency you're using, and they're telling you this is effective. This is effective, this helps you, this will increase your numbers, and they're not wrong. It will. But it does so at the cost of a breakdown between you and your audience. It does so at the cost of any sense of trust between what you're willing to do to make the sale versus the point and the idea that crowdfunding is there to help make things come to life, to bring people behind your product, to help it show up when it didn't have to, when they could have waited for the better deal. They could have just stuck to whatever other games they needed to buy, but they sat there and they showed up for your campaign, and they did that so that you could lie to them. I acknowledge that there's a lot of things in marketing that aren't the best. There's a lot of senses of betrayal. Every time a crowdfunding campaign cancels after being fully funded and says, whoops, that wasn't really our funding goal, a certain number of people walk away from crowdfunding feeling lied to, feeling manipulated, and feeling like this isn't the place for them. I don't like fake funding goals, by the way. I never have. I recognize to some extent that the ecosystem has changed. And the ecosystem does push for fake funding goals. And so when a creator's in that hard spot where they have to choose between the potential failure of the project before it even begins versus a lie that in most cases will never come to life and will never hurt anyone, I'm not advocating for it. I'm saying I understand it. This one I understand less so. It is a lie that will be visible. It is a lie that preys on our worst emotions, not our positive ones. It is a lie that will be constantly changing. And also you can get a few extra projects sold. That's another distinction. Another distinction, by the way, is I do genuinely believe that fake funding goals can really kill a project. The lack of them. Versus I don't think this kills a project. I think this gets you another sale. I think there's a difference between trying to survive versus trying to get more sales. And so I don't like this system at all. And that's why I will. Let's get to the Q&A. Let's move to the Q&A stuff. The questions are different things. Because I think there are a few questions that are interesting to get into as far as, sure, I'm very passionate about this. I'm very heated about this. Let's get into a few questions about it. Will I cover projects that do this? Likely, yes. Mostly because I don't know beforehand. But even if I knew beforehand, would I cover a project that did this? Would I cover it either in a review or a paid preview? Would Board Game Co. still take on a project that did this? Likely, yes. I'm not actually trying to hurt creators here. I'm not averse to that. But make no mistake, every time I see their campaign, every time I see a campaign when I'm covering a 2-back and not to back, I will call it out. I will give you a hard time. I will point out that you are trading a degree of trust and community for the sake of the extra sale. I will point it out to my audience in whatever capacity I can, and whatever voice I have in this industry, and whatever voice I have in this space, I will try to make this a thing that happens less. But I'll probably still cover things, mostly because I wouldn't know in advance. I've already covered things. I've already covered projects that have done this. Paid projects. I've covered paid projects that have done this, and then on crowdfunding gone and called it out because I don't like this thing. Question number 2, and the really tricky pickle one. This is a tricky one. What if Gamefound adopts this as a feature? I work for Gamefound, at least as of the filming of this video, I work for Gamefound, and what if Gamefound adopts this as a feature and embraces it as a thing that they push because it incentivizes crowdfunding? That is tricky. That is tricky. If that happens, here's a few things I can say. Number 1 is that it might force me into a conflict of interest in the sake of not having to put my employers in a hard position where they really don't like the things I'm saying. It's possible I'll have to take a step down from how vocally against this thing I am. I'm not saying I will take a step down. I'm saying it's possible. I recognize the reality of conflicts of interest, and I don't want to be in a position where the thing I actively hate and want to not be a part of crowdfunding is being done and actively pushed and promoted by Gamefound. I don't want that. So I guess what I'll say to that is, on the off chance I go silent in this, at the same time that Gamefound introduces it as a feature, know full well that I was against it happening, and the silence I'm choosing at the time is something that I'm just having to deal with, and I don't like it. I hope it doesn't come to that, but I do want to acknowledge that possibility. It is inherently, again, so far when Gamefound has done things, I've not been against anything Gamefound does in general, by the way. The closest thing that could be an interesting conversation is StretchPay, because StretchPay is one of those things that it's been embraced very, very wholly by backers and by creators alike. And you could argue that StretchPay allows people to make decisions that they shouldn't make as far as how they spend the money. And I'm cognizant of that. But I also think installment payments have been around for a very long time, and to a certain extent, I think they allow for a lot of freedom and a lot of potential, a lot of good things, and they do sometimes allow people to make decisions they shouldn't make. Which is why every time I've ever talked about StretchPay, I've made a point of talking about how you should back responsibly, spend responsibly. But that's the only one that I could argue in any way would be iffy. In general, I've been on board with the decisions that Gamefound makes. I think they make decisions that are good for the community. I think they make decisions that are good for crowdfunding, and I think this is not a decision that's good for crowdfunding. But in the off chance it shows up for Gamefound, you know that I wasn't a part of that conversation, or I was against it happening. I probably would be a part of the conversation. I'd be against it happening. So just a hypothetical to deal with. Next question. Aren't I being a little over the top on this? I've sat there many times and watched other companies, I watched other people be upset about fake funding goals, be upset about exclusives, and I sat there and defended companies for shipping it to retail first before giving it to backers. I've sat there and defended companies over a lot of different things. Aren't I being a little over the top on this? Yes. I mean, yes, I am. Now, I'll say a few things to that. First of all, part of this video was me trying to explain why this bothers me so much, why I view it as the worst of all the evils, recognizing that things above it have happened, but I view this as the worst, the most scummy. And again, if you've ever gone to one of those countdown sites where they have a little timer ticking down telling you that you have 4 minutes and 52 seconds left to make the purchase, you know how scummy that feels. You know how it feels. And that's what's happening here. So I've tried explaining why I feel that this is the worst of the worst, but also, and importantly, this is my channel. This is my opinion. This is my voice to a large extent. And so to that end, I am allowed to sit there and say that something doesn't bother me as much, but this one does. And I'll make you this commitment. Any single person who wants to send me a video explaining why this is not that big a deal and why this should be allowed, if you want to defend the companies in this one, I'll watch it. I'll watch it because, hey, you did me that favor when I put out my video, so I'll watch it. Number 4. Q&A number 4. Why am I making such a big deal about it? Why? Okay, great. So that sure, I'm going over the top, but why is this such a big deal? And the answer there is that I think it's early enough in the adoption of this practice that this is the time to make a big deal. This is something that was infrequent. For me, I cover a lot of crowdfunding campaigns, and if I go back 6 months, I don't remember seeing this. But in the past 3 months, I've seen it like 5 or 6 times now. So it's something that's popping up. It's something that's coming out of nowhere. Or coming from somewhere. You have a successful campaign that does it, and people are like, boom, let's do this. This is the new thing. This is the new thing that works. Once upon a time, Come On ran a campaign that had stretch goals, and it blew up crowdfunding. And it did a tremendous amount of things for the industry, both good and bad, in the nature of how things are done. But the complicated part is this good and bad. For every person that hates the existence of a plastic miniature stretch goal, there's somebody else that appreciates having it in their collection. It is more complicated. It is not as black and white. This is happening now. This is the time to have a voice in the conversation. This is the time to squash it before it's something that's just part of crowdfunding and accepted. Because things do that. That's how life works. If something gets adopted too fast, too quickly, it just becomes the thing that's out there. This is the time to have a voice in the conversation. And I don't think that I have a ton of impact, but I think I have some impact on the board game crowdfunding space. And so yes, if a creator's out there and they're on the fence as to whether this is or isn't a good thing, I want them to know that yes, when I cover the campaign in my weekly roundup video, I will give you a hard time about it. I will. It sounds threatening. I don't like the way that sounded. I don't like this feature. I don't like I don't like the manipulation and continuous changing lie to your audience. I really can't stand it. And maybe I'm wrong. I said I'll watch your videos. Anyone sends me a video of any kind or any sort of anything about why this is not a big deal and why I'm overreacting, by all means send it to me. I will look over it. Maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe I'm just, choosing the wrong hill to die on. But I think if we're going to stop this, I think if in any way, shape, and form you can have an effect, you can have an impact on whether every single tabletop crowdfunding campaign 5 years from now has that as the running thing. Just lie to every single person, tell them the limited pledges. And by the way, to a weird extent, if you get to the point where everyone knows it's a regular thing, it does lose some of the impact, but we're not there. The whole reason you have someone who walks into crowdfunding, they back a campaign and at $70,000 over the funding goal, it cancels and that person feels betrayed. The reason that still happens is because every single time, for every person that knows that this is the way crowdfunding works, there's somebody else who is just discovering it and feels lied to and feels betrayed and feels like this is not the place for them. There's always going to be someone new. And I don't want this to be the thing that pushes crowdfunding. Sure, you and I know that when we pop onto a site that has a 6-minute countdown timer and a watch that looks pretty cheap, it has a good price on it, we both know that it's fake. It doesn't stop it from feeling less scummy. So yeah, if I can make a difference, now's the time. Rest assured, if it gets to a point where everyone's doing it and I had no impact, I'll move on with life. I will. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life being bitter and upset about something that I happen to not like. It just happens to be that right now is at a point in time where I think if I ever am going to make a difference at all in how quickly adopted this is and whether it's adopted at all, I think now's the time for me to make us think of it, for you to vote with your wallet if you don't like it either. And by the way, if you don't mind at all, back the game. By all means, if you don't care, the same way I've always said vote with your wallet. If this doesn't bother you, fine. Vote accordingly. Do what you need to do accordingly. But if it does bother you, now is the time to sit there and consider not backing the campaign that tried to get you to back by being willing to blatantly and continuously lie to you with a sense of urgency that is fake the entire way through. That's the video. I sound upset. I mean, I am upset. I don't like this one bit. I am upset, but I don't remember the last time I've been on. I don't do this stuff. I don't do rampages. I need coffee. I need to calm down. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and vote with your wallet. If it doesn't bother you, keep backing. And if it does bother you, stay far away and show companies that this is not the way to build a community. I hope you have a good one.